The Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, is not a place for the faint of heart. With 20 corners that snaked through the undulating landscape and a back straight where speeds touched a staggering 215 miles per hour, it was a graveyard for ambition. But for one man, it was supposed to be a coronation. Toprak Razgatlioglu had arrived in the MotoGP paddock not as a rookie, but as a phenomenon. A man who had redefined what was possible on two wheels in the Superbike World Championship, now stepping into the premier class with the Prima Pramac Yamaha squad. The hype was explosive. The Turkish star, known for his gravity-defying stoppies and a braking style that bordered on the suicidal, was the shot of adrenaline the Japanese manufacturer desperately needed. Yamaha had been wandering in a technical wilderness for seasons, watching their European rivals, Ducati, KTM, and Aprilia, slowly pull away into a new era of aerodynamic and electronic dominance. Toprak was the X-factor. He was the rider who could supposedly override a bike's limitations. In the days leading up to the Grand Prix, the atmosphere inside the Pramac garage was electric. The telemetry from free practice showed something incredible. Toprak wasn't just adapting to the M1, he was forcing it to dance to his rhythm. But as the sun began to bake the Texas asphalt on Saturday morning, a subtle shift occurred. Behind the forced smiles of the engineers and the calm, focused expression of the rider, something felt off. According to those close to the team, a single sensor on the backup bike had been replaced late Friday night. It seemed like a routine precaution, a standard procedure in a sport measured in millimeters and milliseconds. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next. And it would change everything for him, his team, and the entire season. The sprint race, short, violent, and unforgiving. In MotoGP, the sprint is a flat-out sprint where fuel management and tire preservation take a backseat to raw, unadulterated aggression. As the lights flickered and died, Toprak launched the Yamaha M1 off the line with the clinical precision of a veteran. The start was, by all accounts, a success. He held his line, navigated the treacherous uphill turn 1, and began to settle into a rhythm that suggested a podium was within reach. He was hunting, finding the gaps, and using his signature late braking to haunt the rear wheels of the leading pack. The Turkish rider seemed to be in total control of the machine. But 3 laps into the heat of battle, the machine began to fight back. It started as a hesitation, a microscopic delay between the twist of the throttle and the roar of the engine. At first, Toprak thought it was a gust of the notorious Texas wind or perhaps a momentary loss of traction on the dusty surface. But as he exited the triple right-hander of turns 16, 17, and 18, the power didn't just hesitate, it staggered. Inside the helmet, Toprak felt the bike's personality shift. The engine's usually aggressive and consistent response suddenly became unstable, turning the M1 into something unpredictable. The electronic brain of the motorcycle, the system designed to keep the 250 horsepower beast from flipping over or spinning out, seemed to be hallucinating. The power output was no longer a smooth curve, it was a jagged, broken line. Yet even as the choppy response vibrated through his clips, Toprak refused to yield. He was a rider built on grit, a man who had won championships by wrestling bikes into submission. But he was about to learn a brutal lesson. In the modern era of MotoGP, you cannot outride a failing code. And the real turning point was happening away from the cameras, deep within the bike's wiring. The technical analysis of a MotoGP bike is often shielded behind a wall of corporate secrecy. But the symptoms Toprak was experiencing pointed toward a catastrophic failure in the engine mapping or the inertial measurement unit EMU. When the bike's electronics cannot accurately calculate its lean angle or position, the traction control begins to intervene when it shouldn't, cutting power at the exact moment a rider needs it most to stay upright. Toprak later admitted to the media that the bike began to feel strange. On the long straights of COTA, where stability is everything, the Yamaha felt like it was gasping for air. Every time he leaned the bike over, he was playing a dangerous game of Russian roulette. If the power surged at the wrong moment, it would result in a high side, a violent incident that has ended more than one career in this paddock. The frustration in the garage was palpable. The Prima Pramac team had spent the entire weekend searching for the perfect setup, and by Saturday morning they believed they had found it. The practice sessions had shown a bike that was stable, fast, and most importantly, suited to Toprak's aggressive style. But the reality on the track was proving to be a nightmare. Reports from insiders suggested that the tension between the riders' camp and the Yamaha technicians began to simmer the moment the lap time started to drop. This wasn't just a mechanical failure, it was a psychological blow. Toprak had moved to MotoGP to prove he was the best in the world. Now he was being made to look like an amateur because of a ghost in the machine. But what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. A racer's instinct is to finish, to cross the line even if the bike is falling apart beneath them. But as Toprak entered the fast sections of the track, sections that require absolute faith in the machine's stability, the setback became too great to ignore. The bike was no longer responding safely. It was choppy, erratic, and increasingly dangerous. With a heavy heart and a face masked by his visor, Toprak made the most difficult decision a champion can make. He sat up, raised a hand to warn the riders behind him, and veered toward the pit lane. The sight of the 54 bike rolling slowly into the garage while the rest of the field roared past was a staggering image. In the high-stakes world of MotoGP, every point is a diamond. To retire from a sprint race without a crash is often seen as a sign of defeat, but for Toprak, it was a matter of survival. The risks of a high-speed mechanical failure at a track like COTA were simply too high. Returning to the garage, the silence was deafening. The mechanics who had worked through the night to perfect the M1 stood in stunned disbelief. There were no heated arguments, at least not yet, but the air was thick with a sense of turmoil. Toprak didn't hide his disappointment. He removed his helmet, his hair matted with sweat, and began a frantic, hushed conversation with his crew chief. The Turkish rider emphasized that the problem appeared suddenly, with no prior warning signs during the morning sessions. This wasn't a gradual decline, it was an electronic heart attack. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. As soon as the bike was propped up on its stands, the Yamaha technicians descended upon it like surgeons. Laptops were plugged in and data began to stream across the screens in a blur of graphs and code. They were looking for a smoking gun, a sensor failure, a short circuit, or a software glitch that could explain why a championship-level machine had suddenly lost its mind. The investigation was intense. This incident raised serious concerns for Yamaha in what was already an increasingly competitive season. The Japanese manufacturer was trying to recover from years of stagnation, and a technical DNF for their star signing was a massive blow to their reputation. Paddock whispers began to spread. Was the Yamaha M1 simply too fragile for Toprak's brutal riding style? Some mechanics claimed something felt off with the electronics integration since the team had switched to a new aero package. There were rumors of deeper tension behind closed doors, speculation that the riders' feedback and the team's data weren't aligning. Toprak wanted more raw control. The engineers wanted more electronic intervention. While the technicians worked, Toprak was forced to face the media. He remained professional, but the strain was visible. He spoke about the team's hard work and the positive signs from qualifying, but his words couldn't hide the reality. The rider who had conquered the superbike world was now being humbled not by his rivals, but by his own equipment. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. The fallout from the sprint race wasn't just about the lost points. It was about the loss of momentum. In MotoGP, confidence is the currency of speed. If a rider doesn't trust his bike to respond predictably at 200 mph, he cannot find those final 0.2 of a second that separate the podium from the back of the pack. Toprak's aggressive style, his ability to change direction with violent precision, is built entirely on his feeling for the front end and the engine's torque. Without that feeling, he was a warrior without a sword. As the sun set over the Texas hills, the focus shifted to the main race on Sunday. The expectation was clear: the bike must be in top condition. There could be no excuses. The technicians worked all night, reportedly replacing the entire wiring harness and the main ECU. They were racing against the clock, fueled by caffeine and the desperate need to save face. Inside the motorhomes, the uproar of social media was already beginning. Fans in Turkey were demanding answers, accusing the team of failing their hero. The pressure on the Prima Pramac Yamaha garage had reached a breaking point. Toprak tried to remain positive, realizing that the season was long and there were still many opportunities to improve. He knew he had the pace. He knew he had the talent. But as he looked at the data from his rivals, the Ducatis that seemed to run with the clockwork reliability of a Swiss watch, the weight of the task ahead must have felt immense. The story of Toprak Razgatlioglu in Texas is more than just a tale of a technical failure. It is a microcosm of the struggle currently facing the Japanese giants in MotoGP. It is a story of a world-class athlete fighting against the limitations of a machine that hasn't yet caught up to his ambition. When the bike is working perfectly, Toprak is a force of nature. He is capable of delivering spectacular and aggressive racing action that leaves fans breathless. He is a staggering talent who deserves to be fighting at the front. But the turmoil at COTA proved that in this sport, the rider is only one half of the equation. As the paddock packed up and moved toward the next round, the question remained: had Yamaha truly found the source of the ghost? Or was this just the first of many setbacks in Toprak's MotoGP journey? Some believed the issue was a one-off freak occurrence. Others, more skeptical, suggested it was a symptom of a much deeper rift between the bike's philosophy and the rider's soul. What happened after that weekend left even his closest team members stunned. The data from the sprint race was sent back to Yamaha's headquarters in Iwata, Japan, for a deep dive analysis. The rumors that surfaced weeks later suggested that the failure wasn't just a sensor. It was a fundamental conflict in the way the engine handled the extreme bumps of the Texas track. It was a problem that couldn't be fixed with a simple software update. Toprak Razgatlioglu remains a fighter. He will return to the track, he will find the limit, and he will continue to push the boundaries of what a motorcycle can do. But the Texas Nightmare will always serve as a reminder. In the high-velocity world of MotoGP, the distance between glory and disaster is often nothing more than a single, flickering line of code. And for Toprak, the fight to master the machine is only just beginning.